friends, welcome back to Crime Adjacent Season 8, the case of the Michigan Nightstalker. Here's where things stand. Sheriff Morgan Press said in a later interview for Dateline that two immediate thoughts came to mind when she heard about the break-in and assault at Bear River Country Club that night. One, who could it be? If the killer was not Meeks or Michaels or even Bill Laboa, who she had just arrested and was quite literally putting into her police car when the call came over the radio about the country club assault, then who, if not these three? And second, if the caller was right, if the clown was currently at the country club, roaming the late-night hallways and abandoned ballrooms in search of one particular person, a potential last victim, then this evening would take a very sudden and very drastic turn. Because Press realized if this information was correct, then Press wouldn't have to protect people from a murdering psychopathic clown. She'd have to protect the clown from her very own deputy, Deputy Alex Swanson. Maybe they didn't know it, or maybe they did, who knows. But whoever this clown was, they picked the worst possible person to mess with, and it would lead to their downfall. Here's the story. Only a few episodes in Season 8 until we hit the road for a series of live shows. And Crime Adjacent listeners, do I have some stories for you? Nikki and I have combed through our archives, and we are ready to discuss some of the wilder cases we have encountered over the years. Each episode will feature a standalone case instead of a season-long story arc, and each case will take you into the depths of true crime and the unbelievable horrors we can inflict on each other, but also the incredible will of the human spirit to seek justice and safety together. I can't wait to share these stories with you in person, so pop on over to the Patreon page, patreon.com/crimeadjacent, to keep up to date and hear behind-the-scenes details. From San Francisco, this is Crime Adjacent, the never-ending true crime story told weekly. I'm Chase Patrick. The summer lake season was not yet in full swing on Walloon Lake on May 23, 2010, but there was a scattering of backyard fires visible along the shoreline, like a land-bound mirror image of the stars speckled across the dark sky above. It was one of those perfect early summer nights. Permanent long-term residents and a few early summer vacationers sat by their outdoor fires and enjoyed the warmth and laughter of making s'mores together on the banks of this incredible lake. But one by one, as the night wore on, the fires went out and people retreated to their homes for bedtime. It was a calm, peaceful, warm night with no hint of the horrors that would soon find their way to this lake. Because one of those fires, it seemed, didn't go out as planned. A gentle wind came and picked up a dying ember and carried it ever so lightly from the backyard of one particular house along Ruler Road to this house's roof. There, on the dry wooden frame, this ember slowly burned and began to smoke, and finally, after a few hours and with the help of the breezes coming off of Lake Michigan, it caught fire. But the thing is, it's late at night by this time. The people inside this home, a dad, a mom, and 3 children, all sisters, had gone inside around 10 p.m. that night. They got ready for bed, went to sleep, and were snoozing away inside their home by the time the ember had turned into a fire at around 2 a.m. That's the best guess timeline according to a later fire forensics report. According to the Petoskey Tribune, fire investigators initially thought the fire ignited around 2 a.m. It sort of gathered steam for another half hour or so, unbeknownst to anyone inside the house. Again, it's on the roof. There are no smoke alarms up there. So this fire just quietly spread over the length of the entire house, engulfing the roof in flame before anyone woke up and noticed anything at all. And then, aided by a rush of wind, the fire moved downward, quickly, very quickly. Because it had already engulfed the entire roof, it also very quickly engulfed the entire house by the time it traveled down each wall. What I mean to say is, by the time anyone inside realized there was a fire, it was too late. This fire was now burning every single wall and every single door, and there was no way to escape. Neighbors called the fire department, but it was too late. The mom, dad, and one of the 3 sisters perished in this fire. But the arriving firefighters noticed something when they got to the scene around 4:30 a.m. 2 of the sisters were outside, in the backyard, by the fire pit near the lake, about 10 to 15 yards from the house. One was standing, fully clothed, quietly watching the house burn, her calm eyes reflecting the inferno raging in front of her, while the other sister, maybe a year or so younger, was on her hands and knees, coughing and wheezing and crying and trying to slap at her back as if something was biting her. Fire Chief Tilda Jorgensen said in her official report that it was such a contrast. One sister just quietly watching the fire, while the other writhed on the ground, desperate to put out the flames that had consumed her pajamas and caused them to stick to her back in a soupy, burning glop of melted acrylic. This is when Jorgensen realized the call she thought this was, the fire she had seen a million times before, was not what it seemed. This was not the case of a flying ember in a quietly building fire. This was something else. Seeing this conflicting scene of sereneness and anguish playing out in front of her that morning, it told her something was wrong. But she looked at the sisters again and just thought they were so young. One was about 12 and one maybe 10. It couldn't be. As soon as the fire crews managed to extinguish the blaze, they realized, all of them, including the chief, that yes, it could be. Because they didn't just smell smoke and burning wood and chemicals. They smelled gasoline. It was unmistakable. And from her experience, this wasn't something else she had seen before in her years on the job. A kid playing with matches, near some fireworks, or near a parent's lawnmower and gasoline stash. An accident. The U.S. Fire Administration reports that roughly 50,000 fires a year are started by children, accidentally. They're curious or messing around and poof, things quickly get out of hand. But there's no harm intended. I couldn't find the exact number of cases, but the Fire Administration reports it's very rare to see what Jorgensen suspected. A fire started very purposefully, not accidentally or out of curiosity, and with intent to harm. And yes, true crime fans, I know what you're thinking. Fires, part of the dark triad, that early predictor of serial killers, animal cruelty, peeing the bed longer than normal, and fires. Hate to break it to you, and without nerding out too much here, but this early psychology that informed a lot of early criminal profiling is not the gold standard today. This all came about from a 1960s study of psychiatric patients, not serial killers, and even the author, John MacDonald, was like, hey, remember, small sample here, and these guys aren't killers. Nevertheless, this dark triad theory took hold for a long, long time. You might still see it bandied about in true crime pop culture. Fire Chief Jorgensen, however, wasn't thinking about serial killers. She was thinking about this fire. She was thinking about how rare arsons like this were, and this was, indeed, arson, because she could smell the gasoline everywhere, on the walls, the floors, the roof. It was evident, even with minimal inspection, that someone had very clearly doused every room with gas and then simply lit a match. According to the Petoskey Tribune initial reports on this case, Jorgensen wrote that night that she looked to the backyard fire pit, to the 2 sisters, and realized she might be staring not at victims, but at possible arsonists. By this time, one of the girls, the younger one, about age 10, had already been moved to an ambulance, and they were about to take her to the hospital. Seeing this, Jorgensen immediately ran up to the ambulance with axe in hand and oxygen mask in the other, waving her arms. She stopped the ambulance before it left, throwing open the doors to the surprise and anger of the paramedics within. To their mind, they had to get this girl to the hospital, fast, now. She was hurting and possibly dying. But Jorgensen needed one tidbit of information. She didn't even need to talk to the girl inside, who by this point was drifting in and out of consciousness. So with the door open and the paramedics yelling at her, Jorgensen takes a big, lung-filling gasp of air and realizes no gasoline. nothing. This was not her arsonist. So without a word, she turns her attention then to the other girl, the 12-year-old, who had simply been standing in the backyard, quietly staring at the fire when the firefighters arrived. She was completely uninjured. But by this time, as the ambulance peeled away, this older sister was now draped in a blanket and was sitting in a cop car with Sheriff Morgan Press, who had also arrived on scene by this point. Press saw Jorgensen walking over with real intent, and these two old pros who had seen a lot on the lake and around town over the years and knew each other quite well, they exchanged this quiet, knowing look. Press crinkled her nose, and her eyes shifted to the girl, like Press was trying to signal something. Jorgensen opened the passenger door and smelled it immediately. Gas. This girl, about 12, was dressed in clean clothes, not pajamas, and she just stared at the house, quietly, intently, as it continued to burn with everyone but one sister inside. Sheriff Press and Fire Chief Jorgensen had seen shock before, plenty of it, but this was not that. This girl was simply quiet and clear-eyed and content. It was a weird look, Jorgensen said, not the kind of look you see from scared kids who had quite literally just lost their home and their entire families within it. Because that's exactly what had happened. The fire forensics examination said the fire was started not by an errant ember, as everyone had believed initially. It simply had to be, right? But by an accelerant, gasoline, that had been poured over every single inch of the house and then lit from the back door, which had then been locked. Firefighters found a gruesome, almost impossibly sad scene inside, with the bodies of the victims left behind to tell their stories. Jorgensen said the father of this family was discovered inside his bedroom, near the closet door. They presumed he had fumbled for the wrong door amidst the darkness and smoke and panic, had been consumed by smoke, and then simply passed out before the fire got to his body. The mom was discovered in the youngest sister's bedroom. This girl, Jennifer, was 5, and she died on the side of the bed, as if she had been pulled from the bed in the middle of the night and dragged a short distance across the floor by her mother, who held the bedroom door frame with one hand and her youngest daughter's hand with the other. This is how they found their bodies later. Jorgensen said she discovered something interesting about the middle daughter's bedroom, a 10-year-old named Alexandra, the one with the burning pajamas. When firefighters finally got to this room, there were remnants of a wet towel on the floor, which they presumed Alexandra had used to seal off the door threshold to prevent smoke from getting into her room. Smart kid, Jorgensen thought. She wrote in her official report, that probably bought her just enough time to plot her escape. And that escape came from a lamp-sized hole in her bedroom window, and Jorgensen later learned that Alexandra did indeed toss a lamp through the window and then climb out onto the roof before jumping to the grass below, her pajama top burning and sticking to her back. Outside, Alexandra quickly encountered the last member of the family, the 12-year-old, Millicent, the one who just kept staring at the fire and was very clearly, from the smell of her, the one who handled the gasoline that night. Things like this are tricky to talk about. These are kids. Millicent's official records are sealed, as she was tried in juvenile court for arson and murder, but is now serving out a very likely lifelong sentence in a Michigan mental institution, which are now called Centers for Forensic Psychiatry and are basically a super secure prison-like hospital center. This child is there, still, today, now nearly 30, because she has not said a word about this arson since. In fact, she hasn't spoken a word to anyone since. Ever. Not one word. Not even to her sister, Alexandra, the sole surviving member of this fire. I won't sidetrack this story with motive or psychology or why some kids do this, burn their families to death. Suffice it to say, this fire, it was big news on Walloon for years. The girl who killed her family, who lit them ablaze in the middle of the night for no reason that anyone could discern. One minute, everything was fine, and then the next, fire. Rumors of abuse revenge or schizophrenic breaks with reality, you name it, people came to all of their own conclusions with the absence of any real information. But amidst all this, there was another, perhaps more important question to answer. What to do with the surviving sister? Her immediate family was gone. Her eldest sister, age 12, was now in a psychiatric hospital, and neither Press nor Jorgensen could track down any additional family, anywhere. So this 10-year-old girl, in the span of just minutes, now suddenly had no one. So as she recovered slowly in the hospital, Press and Jorgensen admitted they pulled a few strings behind the scenes, because they realized this girl might not have any family, but the town actually did have a reliable foster parent, someone who had stepped in during family emergencies like this. Well, not like this. No one had seen anything this bad. So Press and Jorgensen reached out to this foster mom, and she agreed, immediately. Yes, of course. Say less, I'll be there. This foster mom dropped everything that day and headed to the hospital and stayed with Alexandra day and night. She slept in the hospital room for 3 weeks. When the little girl finally woke up, this lady was there, waiting. When Alexandra was ready to go home, this lady took her to her own home. It was not easy, not by any stretch of the imagination. There was physical recovery, emotional recovery, you name it. How do you even, or do you ever, get over this, especially when you're 10? But the thing is, time just goes on. This little girl grew. She was off Walloon Lake. She lived in Petoskey now with this nice woman and her husband. They had a nice house, the sort of weird relationship that the little girl couldn't quite grasp until she was older. It looked and felt different than her own parents' relationship, but it was kind. That's what she would say later. There was kindness and love and fun and just a sense that Alexandra would always have someone, these 2 new people who were suddenly thrust into her life. But again, time. It just keeps going, and Alexandra eventually graduated high school and became an adult, and she's left with this decision now, whether to stay or go. She rarely went back to Walloon. She never visited her old house. But this couple, they were adamant. Do not sell it. Ever. Hold on to it. In fact, this couple, although they never fixed up the house, it was still a charred ruin on the lake. That charred house just on the other side of Claire's cabin that I mentioned way back at the beginning of this story. This couple, over the years, they paid every tax and maintenance bill for the land and the house. One day, they kept telling Alexandra this house would be worth a fortune, and by the time she figured out what she wanted to do with her life, whether she wanted to stay or whether she wanted to go, they would support her and they would help sell this land, and she would pocket, quite literally, millions. She could start over here or wherever she liked. And this kindly couple knew this, deep down, from the very beginning, because they had seen it 1,000,000 times before. In fact, they themselves had a hand in selling these properties. They saw that houses and land on the lake just kept increasing in value, with the likes of Roger Michaels and his billionaire ilk coming in and laying out fortunes for a spot on the lake. You've probably guessed by now, and you'd be right. That woman who slept in the hospital with Alexandra when she was 10, who guided her through the turbulent waters of high school and then college and listened intently and with pride when Alexandra said she wanted, more than anything, to be like one of the helpers who showed up late at night in her hour of need. That woman, this foster mom, was none other than Eileen Coffey. Eileen Coffey, who, fast forward a few years to this last Sunday in September 2024, had just lost her husband, Bill, to the Michigan Nightstalker. And now, it seemed, was in danger herself that night. Because as Sheriff Press and Deputy Swanson were loading Bill LaBoa into the cop car that night, a call came over the radio. It was Wesley Meeks, bar manager over at the Bear River Country Club, and yes, the cousin of Tim Meeks. He said someone dressed as a clown had sneaked up behind him and knocked him over the head at the country club bar. He said hurry, the clown was still there. He could hear the horn echoing throughout the empty club, which was closing down for the season. It had a scattering of hotel rooms used for honored members like Bill and Eileen Coffey, and for people who rented the place for weddings or special events. It had ballrooms and a bar and a big, nice, fancy restaurant that was in full swing during the summer months. But that night, with so many tourists already gone for the season, the country club was practically empty. Just Wesley Meeks that night, and one guest, Eileen Coffey, who told him she didn't feel like being home alone that night. She wanted the familiarity of the place she and Bill loved. She wanted a few drinks. And then, the clown. A little before 11 p.m. that night, someone sneaked up behind Meeks and knocked him out cold. Meeks told the 911 dispatcher, which was now relaying the information to Press and Swanson, that when he came to, Eileen was gone, but that he could hear someone with a clown horn seemingly roaming the halls. He could hear the horn going honka 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 around the empty cavernous ballrooms and hallways, and he could hear one name repeating over and over again above the sound of the horn. Eileen, Eileen, where are you? It was all Deputy Swanson needed to hear. She heard the name, and an instantaneous, quiet rage came into her eyes. At the open door of the cop car, as they listened to the dispatcher on the radio, Press grabbed Swanson's shoulder and said, "Wait for backup, I'm telling you, wait." But it was no use. Deputy Swanson was already running to her car. She was already at the wheel. She was already fishtailing away from the dock and gunning white-knuckled and seething to the clubhouse because Eileen was there, and Eileen was in trouble. Eileen needed her. She needed a helper, just as she herself needed Eileen so many years ago. And Deputy Alexandra Swanson wouldn't let her down. Next time on Crime Adjacent. Sheriff Press couldn't stop Deputy Swanson. She knew that, deep down. If someone was targeting Eileen, it would probably be this someone's final mistake. And that's when Press realized how she could help. She could figure out exactly who was after Eileen and who Swanson was racing to confront. As Swanson and I sped towards the country club, Bill LaBoa, in handcuffs now and in the back seat of Press's car, spoke up. "You know," he said, "I have this town wired. I could probably figure out exactly who it is. For a deal, that is." If you're enjoying this show, please let me know what you think with a like and review on your favorite listening app. From San Francisco, this is Chase Patrick with a reminder. It's not crime, it's crime adjacent. I'll see you next week.